My feelings are that the Mother Goddess was central to Avebury. I come here when I need to be embraced by her arms.
Ironically, the women who seek their goddess in Avebury may be celebrating the culture in which male power over women was first consolidated. Archaeological evidence from the Neolithic suggests this was the period when women began to be tied to the home.
There's evidence for population rise. Women are increasingly involved in childbirth, and through the Neolithic period the population of Britain goes up several-fold, and they're becoming more tied into a domestic round and domestic grind, and becoming important in terms of their production value to men.
Throughout human history, the development of an agricultural lifestyle has led to a higher birth rate and a more restricted role for women. If there was a marriage of the gods, it's unlikely it was an equal partnership. Yet Terence Meaden proposes that it was the central ceremony of Neolithic belief, not just at Stonehenge, but at Avebury too. Here too, he identifies one stone as the goddess stone, the center of the ritual circle.
We have here a vulva-like arrangement with possibly a clitoris here, and the fact that it was put here facing this direction is the significant thing. In short, there is this vulva mark here, a very powerful feminine symbol indeed.
Many of the original stones which made up the Avebury Circle have vanished, but a computer model which includes the lost stones reveals a single stone which once towered above the rest: the missing obelisk. For Terence Meaden, this was the phallic stone of the bridegroom.
The most important stone of the stone circle was the goddess stone. At the center of the circle was a stone which is no longer here. The obelisk is now marked by this concrete pillar, but it used to stand here 18 feet high. At the start of May in every year, the sun, in rising over the hill, cast a vast shadow which went from the obelisk right through to the goddess stone. The stone was therefore enveloped in shade. That was the marriage of the gods.
To test his theory at Avebury, Dr. Meaden reconstructs the lost obelisk in its original position.
There's a bit of a pointed top, you see.
Professor Ronald Hutton of Bristol University, an eminent authority on ancient religions, has agreed to observe the experiment. Dr. Meaden's theory is too narrowly based on sex for most archaeologists to accept, but some of its elements do appeal to Professor Hutton.
There's a lot of mileage to Terence's idea. The idea that phallic symbols are important in the Neolithic is well borne out. The idea of there being something sacred in sex is also found. You put this lot together and it can actually come into one seasonal rite.
The builders are working to a drawing of the obelisk made by the 18th century scholar William Stukely, who measured many of the stones at Avebury.
We're fortunate in having a drawing made by Stukely in July 1723. It shows the obelisk fallen, and we've been able to reconstruct the obelisk on account of this sketch. We're standing, in fact, in just about the same position where Stukely was when he made the drawing.
I think it's terrific. I think it has absolutely nothing to do with what might have or might not have happened 4,000 years ago when the stones were put up. It might do, but we're in an area where we just cannot prove anything. There is no way of testing this hypothesis.
Dr. Meaden's experiment cannot prove the existence of a prehistoric marriage of the gods, but he can demonstrate the effects of a dawn sunrise as our ancestors might have seen it. 20th century English dawn, misty and cold.
It's now 5:30, 10 minutes to sunrise according to our calculations. We're waiting for the sun. Unfortunately, there's a lot of cloud about. We are rather thinking now the sun won't be seen in the next few minutes.
A Neolithic spring was much warmer than ours, the chance of a spectacular sunrise much greater. Today there remains only one way to defeat the weather. Dr. Meaden sends for a massive 18-kilowatt spotlight to complete his experiment. This was not a midsummer ceremony. Terence Meaden believes that the Avebury marriage of the gods took place around May Day, the traditional time of fertility rites. Using basic geometry and compass readings, and taking into account the astronomical movements of the past 4,000 years, he concludes that for several days in early May, a dawn shadow cast from the phallic obelisk could have reached his goddess stone.
There's plenty of evidence for monuments incorporating seasonal alignments in the British Neolithic. We know that they herded cattle, and if you herd cattle in ancient Europe, you move much to the summer pastures at the beginning of May, and usually there is a ceremony to bless them with fire. The Irish call it Beltane. So it is a big universal North European festival as soon as history begins. It's quite logical it would have been for those who built Avebury.
One more boy, she's there. The effect should be just the same. The apparent diameter of the sun is going to cast a shadow in exactly the same way. The positioning is right. The obelisk is standing proud against the skyline there.
To be here with you in an attempt to see something like the effect that that great monolith would have had 4,500 years ago is thrilling.
Come on, guys, get it switched on. But they are about to do just that.
Oh, here comes the shadow. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant.
It's really perfect. The shadow is splendid.
The shadow is brilliant. I'm just worried by the scale. It doesn't so much penetrate the vulva as overwhelm the entire stone and everything else around it. It looks positively illegal. And it's a gigantic phallic object, and really quite a small vulva, and somehow I expected goddess